weren't as effective as we hoped, or that COVID got more dangerous because of variants, but it doesn't mean that from recovery from COVID unvaccinated.
Well, I agree. These things are hard to interpret, and the way to say is if you had a population, people were vaccinated, then so that's certainly I will say, difficult job during the pandemic has which evidence should be excluded, and that should be the job of be doing that job, and almost none of them of us in the public with a toolkit to understand what these papers say. I would say one conspicuous feature vaccine campaigns against other pathogens, that they would be heralded as heroes, right? You could imagine hubris causing people to deploy this and then discover that it didn't work and it hurt people. But at the point that we're seeing an undeniable pattern of damage, and we know that that damage is disproportionately experienced by younger people, and that the risk of COVID is disproportionately to the old. The idea that it doesn't stop, the idea that it doesn't turn around and say, well, the vaccines are good, let's give them to people over 65. If you're over 40 and you want one, you can have one, but we're not going to vaccinate anybody young because the risk-benefit ratio doesn't make sense. The fact that it doesn't do that means, I think, that somehow whatever is driving this policy is absolutely comfortable with the death of other people. How could it not be? I mean, how could you recommend these mRNA vaccines for children who are not, at least at the moment, vulnerable to COVID? How could you do it?
And do you think this is because of financial pressure? Because this is the only thing that makes sense to me, because there's a vast financial interest in vaccinating as many people as possible.
I see that as the shallow end of the pool, right? And I try very hard not to get ahead of the evidence. I would say at the very least, the floor of plausible explanations, something is interested in making money, is comfortable from decades of corrupting the public health apparatus with making decisions that result in
Acceptable amounts of losses.
Yeah, and acceptable amounts would leave a normal person with their jaw on the floor. But something has become very comfortable with this. And so it may be that. But I also have an uneasy sense about what the larger picture may be here. So there was a concept that I was reluctant to talk about for months, right? It wouldn't let me go, but I was reluctant to talk about it publicly, and I finally did release it on Dark Horse. Admittedly, it needs a better name. I call it the time-traveling money printer. And to make a long story reasonably short, you presumably have thought a little bit about black budgets.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess for your audience, let me just briefly say that a black budget, in a democracy, the power of the purse allows something like the Congress to control, the intelligence community, for example, right? The intelligence community has to go to the Congress in order to get funding to do the things that it wants to do. But the intelligence community also has the capacity to do things that normal folks can't. And they can generate money that isn't on the books by using some of the advantages that come to them by virtue of their position. So you can imagine, for example, the DEA, it has to be involved in a certain number of drug deals in order to catch the bad guys, right? So it has some license to play in drug dealing, and you could imagine, this is not about the DEA, I'm just using them as an example. But the DEA, if it decided it needed a black budget that wasn't under the control of Congress, could use the leeway that it has in interacting with, drug cartels to generate money that it could then use without anybody being able to say no. So that's a black budget. Now, black budgets are one way of doing this. But anything else that can generate money that isn't accounted for in a normal, federal budget has the same potential. And what I want to do is just point out something that seems to have happened here that raises a financial question that I have not heard widely asked. So we've all gone through the thought exercise of, if you had a time machine, what would you do with it? Right? And one answer is, almost no matter who you are, even if you're a super good person who's interested in doing good things, money allows you to do good things. So your time machine, if it can go backwards in time, can allow you to buy Tesla or Apple or Amazon stock and turn a small amount of money into a huge amount of money. And if it can go forward in time, you have similar opportunities, right? You can see what's going to go up or down, and you can buy some or short. So anyway, a time machine would give you the opportunity to generate money. Now, as far as we know, time travel doesn't exist. I'm pretty compelled by Stephen Hawking's proof that it probably doesn't exist. You know about this?
No.
Stephen Hawking threw a party, which he advertised for time travelers. He welcomed all time travelers to come, and none of them showed up. And he said, well, I guess it doesn't exist, right? Because if it did, they'd come. So anyway, let's assume time travel doesn't exist. There's another way of doing the same thing without an actual time machine, right? Printing money. And it requires an awful lot of power to either shape history or slow regular folks down in how much they realize and how quickly they realize it. Right? If you're in a position to do that, then you can print money, right? If you know what's coming, if you know what history is going to do. It's a kind of insider information that is hard to prosecute. It's not like knowing something about a stock price from being an insider. And anyway, so my point is this. There is substantial evidence that COVID began circulating such that it was an important component of what unfolded at the military games in Wuhan in September of 2019. And there's been lots of talk in various publications at this point about the possibility that COVID was circulating earlier than we knew. But if folks knew that it was circulating earlier than we knew, or than the public knew, they had the opportunity to warn us and to help prepare us. But there's another opportunity, which is to actually take some time to position themselves financially so that when the pandemic finally did emerge, it would print money for them, right? If you know that a pandemic is coming and that it is going to spread around the globe and it is going to cause all kinds of alterations, you can, short stocks for cruise ships or, airplanes, hotels, right? You can invest in pharmaceutical companies that have useful technologies, whatever. If you had that advanced information, you could position yourself and it would result in a cryptic, massive transfer of wealth. And so the question is, how much of the story here involves something having understood what was coming and having revealed it at a point that it was positioned rather than it having emerged naturally and, the world suddenly all became aware at the dawning of 2020. Right, that's the question, was there something about this that goes beyond what you were suggesting, which is, well, there's an opportunity to make money if you're in a pharmaceutical company. There's going to be lots of opportunities to sell treatments and vaccines and things like that. That's all true, but there's a much bigger opportunity if somebody is willing to effectively slow down the public awareness of a historical event. And I guess the last thing I would say on that is the environment that we live in, the environment that actually results in you and me doing what we get to do in podcast space, is an environment that exists primarily because people are absolutely starved for reliable sources, right? Every paper is broken. Every university is broken. And that means that people are left to find voices that for whatever reason are credible because they're honest, because they correct their mistakes, whatever. And I guess the point I would make is that the question of zero being a special number interfaces the question of the time-traveling money printer in the sense that keeping people from having mechanisms that tell them what's true is an excellent way of detaining them so that this sort of financial gamesmanship can unfold, right? it has to be true that there aren't newspapers out there seriously pursuing Pulitzer Prizes for deep investigations that, treat nothing as sacred. It doesn't seem to happen anymore. And the question is why? And I can, of course, be certain of nothing. I'm as much an outsider to this as anybody. But I will say there's a version of the story in which our being kept in the dark is a perpetual source of wealth. And that means that people like you and I have to be specially punished for trying to get out of the dark, right? It's what we do. We talk to interesting people who seem to have a beat on something. I talked to Geert Vanden Bosch, and I'm in a position to know that what he's saying is at least sensible, right? Neither of us know if it's going to come true, but I can certainly say there's nothing in that isn't plausible, and that's very dangerous, right? What they want to do is they want to dismiss Geert Vanden Bosch. They want to say he's got a financial conflict of interest. That's why he's saying these things. Well, I don't see it. What I see is a small number of people who have two characteristics. The two characteristics are they've got a toolkit that allows them to see with some clarity. And the other characteristic is that they have the courage, right? And those people are... It has resulted in I think podcasts in which we have to struggle
Love to do it when there's a not as an enemy in some way. I mean, it is like historically, those are the bad people. Let's go kill them. We're the good people. We don't kill each other. You punish people for killing each other. You reward them for killing the bad people. This is like tribal. It's gone on forever. You're seeing echoes of that in that woman's tweet.
Well, but you're seeing something downstream of what's being called mass formation, and the mass formation appears to be downstream of an industrial strength propaganda campaign, a very expensive one, designed to create these unsolvable puzzles for people so that they would end up in this mindset.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things that people like you and I have to do is figure out, where you draw the line. I mean, for me, I have nothing but forgiveness for people who got it wrong and who did what they thought was the right thing on the basis of bad information that they couldn't figure out was bad.
I have the same perspective.
On the other hand, if you went after people who were so-called vaccine hesitant, if you went after them, if you demonized them, if you said they weren't entitled to medical services, if you said it wasn't a tragedy if they died, if you said that kind of stuff, and now you're one of the huge majority of people who has not gotten their bivalent booster, and you're not getting it because there's something nagging at you, because you're now vaccine hesitant, right? And the answer is own up to it. You don't get to keep pretending that you were right to demonize us.
No.
You have switched sides. You've done so on the basis that the evidence has persuaded you that something is not right. And the answer is, look, you're not going to get punished by us if you come out now and you say, actually, I had it wrong, but don't you dare keep coming after us and then hide this fact that you've become hesitant and you don't know how to file that in your own mind. So that's kind of where I draw the line. If we have to get along with each other. We have to figure out how to do that again. And most people didn't do anything wrong.
I'm not drawing that line. And the reason why I'm not drawing that line is because I feel like we have to be charitable and forgiving. And this is the only way we come to unity after this. And I don't want to demonize people who demonized me. I don't want to be angry at people that called me an anti-vaxxer or... Listen, man, I had Dr. Peter Hotez on early I had Michael Osterholm on early, and I had him on again. I mean, I had all these people on early, and the Osterholm podcast freaked so many people out. I did it the very early days of the pandemic, before there was a vaccine, and Osterholm was painting a picture that was absolutely fucking terrifying, and it terrified me, and it made me want to get vaccinated. It made a lot of people like looking forward to that vaccine, and when you have this narrative in your mind, and then you see people that are somehow or another the enemy of that narrative in your mind, or a problem in that they're going to cause more problems for you and for other people and for vulnerable people. Even logically, it didn't make sense because the vaccine did stop the virus in its tracks. Why would you be angry at people that don't take it because they're just going to be vulnerable? Why would you be angry? You should be sad. You should be trying to convince them. Like the only way to convince them that works is with love and understanding, and to communicate with them in a way that's going to reach them. If you call people an idiot and a fool or a monster or demonize them and say laugh when they die. I mean, there was this woman who's a famous food writer who demonized people, and she did it in a way where she was saying that the only good side was that the people that were dying were all these anti-vaxxers, and that somehow or another that was good, that these people that didn't trust the pharmaceutical companies, the companies that have had more criminal punishments, more fines for criminal behavior than virtually any industry that's ever existed, more lying about the adverse effects and the adverse reactions that people possibly could have or were going to have about these drugs that they pushed, where we have internal memos where they describe, like in terms of Vioxx, they describe these potential bad side effects that are going to happen, but also say, but we will do well with these. We have those. We have that evidence.
Yep.
So these people that got duped, I have nothing but love for them. And I think the only way we're going to get out of this is if we forgive them. And people are so hesitant to do that, and they're like, fuck them, fuck this, fuck that. You can't have a society with fuck them. Because we are them. They are us. I could have been one of them. If I wasn't doing this fucking podcast, okay? If I was just a regular comedian and that's what I did for a living, and I didn't pay much attention to alternative media and podcasts that were discussing this, and people like Peter McCullough or Robert Malone or all these people that were sounding the alarm, if I was one of those people that didn't have the access to these kind of conversations, I would not have a nuanced perspective. And if I had gotten vaccinated and other people didn't, I would be like, fuck those people. I would be just like people I know who I used to be friends with, who now hate me and are angry at me and talk shit about me online. And I forgive them, because I would have been like them if I didn't have the access to the kind of conversations that I've had, if I didn't have the kind of mindset that I have, that my personality that is just immune to bullshit. When bullshit hits me, I go, oh, I know what this is. I grew up without a dad, okay? I don't trust people. I think there's a lot of bullshit in the world. You know, I've had people try to do things to me. I've been in dangerous situations. I know people can be sketchy. There's sketchy fucking people out there in the world. And the people that haven't experienced that and don't have that perspective, I can understand why they formed the conclusions that they did, because I could have been them. I 100% could have been them. The only way that we can help each other is for people like you and people like me and other people that have had these other perspectives, the Aaron Rodgers of the world, these people that have been demonized, to forgive people. And if we don't do that, we just continue these ideological tribes that battle each other and move the goalposts, because we saw the goalposts get moved when it turned out that, well, COVID doesn't, or